Welcome back to 100 Days and Beyond. I'm Dudley Peacock, and this is episode 11. This week, we move from diagnosis into design. Last week, we talked about how to read a business before you try to change it. This week is about what happens when you have diagnosed the problem and you are ready to put a brief in front of 3 or 4 vendors and ask them to quote. And here is the uncomfortable bit. Most of the briefs I read for projects worth £100,000 to £500,000 are not actually briefs. They are wish lists. They list symptoms. They list features the client has seen in a competitor. They list tools the client has read about in a magazine. What they do not do is give a vendor enough information to price the work honestly. So today I want to walk you through what a serious brief looks like, and the one clause most briefs leave out that separates a document that gets you a real quote from a document that gets you a guess. Let me walk you through it. A brief cannot be priced if the vendor has to guess what the answer should be. That sounds obvious. And yet, I read brief after brief that leaves every hard decision to the vendor. The most common shape is a symptom list. We want faster reporting. We want better visibility of cash. We want the sales team to have a view of stock in real time. Those are outcomes, not requirements. A vendor cannot price an outcome. A vendor can only price a scope. The second most common shape is a feature list copied from a competitor. We want the module that ZeroTap has, the automation that Sage Intacct has, the workflow we saw on a webinar. That is also unpriceable. A vendor does not know whether you need the full feature or the narrow slice of it that matters for your business. They will either quote for the expensive full thing or the cheap partial thing, and either way, you end up frustrated. The third shape is the empty brief. 2 pages, 1 page of preamble about the company, half a page of requirements that could apply to any business on earth, and a closing paragraph that says, please let us know your price. What the vendor writes back is a number, and that number has been guessed. A brief that can actually be priced has 3 sections in this order: current state, future state, non-negotiables. Current state is the honest map of how the business runs today. Not how you wish it ran, not the tidy version, the real version. Which systems hold which data? How many entities are consolidated? How the month-end close actually happens with the spreadsheets nobody talks about. How many approvals a purchase order goes through and how many of those approvals get rubber stamped. A vendor reading a real current state section learns more about what the project needs than from any requirements list, because the vendor sees where the work is actually going to be. Future state is the shape of the business after the transformation, written as operational reality, not technology. After this project, the finance team closes in 3 days instead of 10. After this project, the sales team sees stock on their phone without opening a laptop. After this project, the CFO signs off a cash forecast weekly with a single click instead of a Friday scramble. That is priceable. A vendor can now see the distance between current state and future state, and that distance is the project. Non-negotiables is the shortest section and the most important. It is the list of things that must be true at the end, not might be true. Integration with Salesforce because the sales team will not change CRM. Retention of the historical inventory data because audit requires it. Go live before the end of the tax year. A vendor who cannot hit a non-negotiable should not quote. A vendor who does quote is honest about how they will hit it and at what cost. Here is the clause that most briefs leave out, and it is the one that separates a serious document from a wish list. It is a hard success metric with a date, not a feature target. A business metric. Month-end close time will be 3 working days by 31 December. Working capital days will be reduced from 48 to 30 by Q3. Cost to serve for a small order customer will be below £6 per order by Q2 next year. A success metric with a date does 3 things. It forces you to be honest about what the project is worth. If you cannot name a measurable improvement, the project is probably not worth doing. It forces the vendor to own an outcome, not a deliverable. A serious vendor will price the project against hitting the metric, not against shipping the software. And it gives both of you an objective answer to the question of whether the project worked, which is the question that gets argued about most painfully on every transformation I have ever seen. The clause itself sits in the non-negotiable section and reads like a contract term. Success of this project will be measured by metric X reaching value Y by date Z. Vendor acknowledges that failure to hit this metric constitutes material failure of the project. If a vendor will not sign that clause, they are telling you they do not believe they can deliver the outcome. You have just saved yourself a year of regret for the price of one difficult conversation. When the responses come back, most buyers read them looking for price. Price matters, but it is the last thing to look at. The first thing to look at is whether the vendor read your brief. A vendor who read your brief writes a proposal that uses your language. They quote your current state problems back to you. They name the non-negotiables and describe how they will hit each one. They engage with the success metric and say what they commit to. Their proposal is short because they know what they are building. A vendor who did not read your brief writes a proposal full of their own language, their methodology, their certified consultants, their award-winning implementation approach. The words are generic and could have been sent to any prospect in your sector. The proposal is long because they are hoping something in it will land. The test for whether a vendor read your brief is to pull 3 sentences at random from their proposal and ask whether they would still be true if they had been written about a different client in your industry. If the answer is yes, the vendor did not read your brief, and you should not hire them no matter what the price is. If the answer is no, the vendor engaged with your business specifically and they belong on the shortlist. That's episode 11, and that's the first episode of week 3, the design week. Today we looked at why most transformation briefs cannot be priced. The 3 sections every serious brief must contain: current state, future state, non-negotiables. The one clause that separates a brief from a wish list, which is a hard success metric with a date, and the short test for whether a vendor actually read your brief. Tomorrow we are talking about the month-end close that takes 10 days and how to get it to 3, because the CFO's real leverage in transformation starts there. If this was useful, subscribe wherever you are listening. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.